At 07:42 a.m. local time, a single sharp chime pierced the hum of consoles deep below decks aboard the carrier. On the screens of the Combat Information Center, the radar signature flickered into life. The contact appeared as a tiny blip over the eastern Caribbean Sea far below the horizon. The CIC crew leaned forward as the plot thickened around that strange radar echo. The room glowed with the pale green of radar scopes and the dull hum of processors. Operators at consoles tracked the contact. Others scribbled bearings on the large plexiglass plotting board. In the center, a CIC watch officer monitored the evolving picture. The atmosphere was tense but disciplined. This was not the first signal picked up that morning, but it would prove the most critical. The carrier was USS Gerald R and her combat information center had just detected a surface contact. Unknown course, unknown intent. Had that contact turned hostile in seconds, it could have spiraled into a full-blown naval confrontation. But instead, what happened would define restraint under pressure. For decades, the concept of a Combat Information Center, or CIC, has been the nervous system of any warship. Inside such centers, all radar, sonar, and communications data converge. Lookouts topside report sightings. Radar operators feed echoes onto screens. Sonar teams listen for submerged threats. Communications specialists relay external reports and intelligence. Navigators supply course and speed data. The CIC then integrates all this into a coherent operational picture. That information flows to the bridge, the weapons control stations, and other command posts. From that unified picture, the commanding officer makes rapid decisions. On modern carriers like Ford, the systems are far more advanced than the early radar-equipped cruisers of World War II. Ford carries a dual-band radar system that merges multiple radar arrays into one integrated radar network. This gives the ship the capacity to detect air and surface threats over vast ranges and under varied conditions. The radar system can rapidly scan for fast, low-flying threats or high-altitude aircraft and can operate, regardless of weather or sea state. In the CIC of Ford that morning, each console flashed data. The dual-band radar had locked on a contact. The tracker system calculated range speed and bearing. The central resource manager on the data processor merged information and began to project the possible track. Other systems cross-checked the echo against known traffic data, friendly unit logs, and friendly aircraft flight paths to determine if this contact was friend or foe. As seconds ticked by, the CIC officer weighed the data. The contact speed was inconsistent with any known merchant or friendly Navy traffic. The bearing placed it on a potential intercept course with the carrier. The identification systems had no match in the database. The CIC room became alive with quiet urgency. Radios crackled with queries. Lookouts were asked for visual confirmation. But none came. The vast expanse of ocean produced no ship silhouette. No wake. Nothing. Suddenly another set of data appeared on a secondary overlay. Electronic emissions consistent with a small fast vessel using radar or navigation beacons. Possibly trying to suppress its electronic signature, possibly using weather clutter to mask itself. The CIC team froze. The radar operators double-checked signal processing algorithms. The plotting team redrew the contacts vector on the plotting board. The next few minutes would decide whether this unknown contact would be treated as hostile or ignored as a false or non-threat. On a lesser ship, or in a less disciplined crew, such uncertainty might have triggered alert condition, raised missile systems, to locked status, perhaps even orders to launch. But on Ford, the watch officers held their nerve. They knew that identification required positive confirmation. They knew that a mistake could trigger catastrophic consequences. In the silence broken only by soft voices and low clicks, the contact drifted slowly closer. The CIC calculated a closing speed that would bring it within weapons range in minutes. The bridge was notified. Weapons control stations stood by. The CIC began to broadcast challenge codes through secure channels. Standard procedure to identify unknown contacts. No response. The radio signature flickered again, then faded. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the radar blip re-emerged, but this time at a different bearing and distance. The vector indicated the contact was turning away. The electronic emissions ceased. The unknown signature faded into the background clutter and was lost. The CIC held its breath. Then the watch officer exhaled and uttered a single terse order. Stand down. For a moment, CIC room remained silent. Then consoles returned to routine background scanning. The watch rotation resumed. The ambiguous contact was logged. The threat dismissed, for now. What none outside that dimly lit nerve center would know for hours was how close the carrier had been to launching its layered air defense systems, initiating readiness alerts, awakening sleeping jets on the flight deck, and possibly sparking political escalation above deck among admirals and perhaps even higher. The restraint exercise in those minutes below decks arguably avoided a confrontation that could have escalated into a naval war in the Caribbean. But the story does not end here. What that contact was, who sent it, whether it was a civilian vessel, a covert intelligence ship, or a probing test by a foreign power, remains unknown. The questions mounted in the CIC, and what would follow over the next hours would shape strategic decisions far beyond just that radar echo. The unknown contact faded from the radar screens, but the CIC remained on high alert. Operators kept their stations, eyes glued to every flicker on the displays. Every sensor, every channel of communication was now under scrutiny. The watch officer reviewed the log and compared it to historical data. Similar radar signatures had appeared before, but rarely under these conditions. The patterns suggested either a deliberate test or a cautious probe by an adversary. On the bridge above the CIC, the commanding officer received updates in precise intervals. Each piece of information was cross-checked and analyzed before making any command decision. The crew understood that the difference between action and restraint could decide the outcome of international diplomacy. The Eastern Caribbean Sea was a hotspot of political tension, with multiple nations monitoring naval movements. A wrong move could provoke confrontation before any orders reached Washington. The CIC now began to run predictive modeling. Using course vectors and speed calculations, the systems projected the contact's likely trajectory. A secondary simulation accounted for potential maneuvers by foreign vessels in the area. Each possibility was evaluated against rules of engagement and threat assessment protocols. Operators updated the plotting board with every new calculation. Small differences in the contact speed caused major divergences in projected intercept points. The CIC team debated over these small changes. Decisions had to be made quickly but accurately. The radar operators noticed a subtle pattern in the contact's emissions. There were microbursts of energy that suggested electronic countermeasure attempts. This meant the vessel could be attempting to disguise its speed or direction. CIC officers immediately engaged electronic warfare specialists to analyze the signal. They ran complex algorithms to separate legitimate returns from false echoes. Minutes felt like hours as the analysis continued. Meanwhile, communications officers monitored all channels for any chatter or signals from other regional assets. Air reconnaissance units were in place, but no aircraft were dispatched without clear orders. The CIC had to balance gathering intelligence and avoiding escalation. The watch officer reminded everyone of the fundamental rule: confirm before engaging. The tension was palpable, yet the crew worked with precision and calm. By mid-morning, the radar blip appeared again. This time it maintained a steady course along an expected maritime lane. The CIC quickly correlated the contact with maritime traffic databases. A partial match emerged. A small civilian vessel registered in another country. It had an authorized presence in the area but had failed to respond to identification queries. The decision point came rapidly. Should the carrier launch reconnaissance aircraft or rely on CIC sensors alone? The watch officer made a calculated call. They would continue observation from the CIC. Any further escalation would be reviewed immediately, but no aggressive action would be taken. Meanwhile, the radar operators continued scanning for multiple signatures. The CIC integrated data from satellite feeds and allied ship reports. Analysts cross-checked every piece of data against intelligence reports. The electronic picture became increasingly clear. The vessel was unarmed and maintaining a safe distance. Yet anomalies persisted. Some radar returns did not match known vessel types. CIC specialists debated the potential for unmanned or experimental craft. Could this be a new stealth platform? Could it be testing electronic warfare countermeasures against the United States? Every hypothesis required careful evaluation. The decision to remain passive became more complex. The commanding officer received a live briefing from the CIC. Officers explained the radar patterns, the electronic emissions, and the projected movements. Each detail was scrutinized. The captain approved continued observation without action, but instructed the CIC to prepare contingency plans. Flight crews on the deck were ready for immediate deployment. Missiles and defensive silos were set to standby. Every protocol was primed but dormant. As the morning wore on, a pattern emerged. The vessel followed a predictable path and did not attempt to close with the carrier. It maintained a consistent speed and avoided provocative maneuvers. CIC officers identified it as a regional survey vessel conducting mapping operations. Electronic signals had appeared suspicious only because of an unusual array of navigational instruments and radar cross-section signatures. The crew exhaled but remained vigilant. In parallel, the CIC began analyzing the implications of misidentification. How often did false positives occur? How could new systems prevent escalation in future encounters? Analysts compiled lessons learned in real time. Each action and restraint decision was logged. Recommendations for improved threat detection and procedural refinement were drafted on the spot. This was the essence of modern naval operations, acting decisively while remaining restrained. By noon, the contact had moved safely beyond the carrier's radar horizon. HISEC operators returned to standard scanning. Data from the encounter was archived and shared with intelligence networks. Analysts noted that the carrier had avoided unnecessary escalation. Diplomacy in the region would not be compromised. Yet, the experience left the crew with heightened awareness of how fragile the balance between peace and conflict could be. Despite the calm return to routine, the CIC had recorded anomalies that demanded further investigation. Subtle electronic signals persisted in background data. These signals did not match any known friendly or civilian signatures. Analysts debated whether this was a single isolated incident or part of a larger pattern of regional probing. The possibility of undisclosed intelligence operations loomed large. The day advanced and the CIC continued scanning. The carrier's radar array swept every sector. Every blip was analyzed. Every anomaly was investigated. The crew knew that the next unidentified contact could come from anywhere. The margin for error remained small. What had started as a single radar ping had become a test of disciplined precision and judgment under extreme pressure. As afternoon approached, the CIC team detected something else. A second set of signals appeared further north. Unlike the first contact, these signals were faster, more erratic, and emitted patterns consistent with electronic countermeasures. CIC operators froze. Every system that had handled the earlier encounter now focused on this new potential threat. The plotting board lit up with multiple vectors. Calculations raced across consoles. Then the signals suddenly split into two distinct courses converging on the carrier's projected position. The room tensed. Weapons control systems were alerted. The bridge was notified immediately. The watch officer instructed all units to maintain observation and prepare for potential evasive maneuvers. The CIC's real test was just beginning. The two new radar contacts approached the carrier with unusual speed. The CIC team immediately launched electronic analysis protocols. Every sensor was tasked to verify identity and track vector. Operators checked against maritime and air databases. Communication specialists sent secure challenge codes to each contact. The signals returned fragmented and irregular responses. Something deliberate was happening. The bridge received a live update. The commanding officer considered immediate defensive action, yet the watch officer emphasized restraint. Engaging without confirmation could spark conflict. Every second stretched with tension as the unknown contacts closed. Predictive modeling calculated time to closest approach. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of consoles. The radar blips split further. One approached at high speed from the east while the second curved from the north. CIC officers identified micro changes in speed and direction. The pattern suggested coordinated behavior. The team debated the potential for hostile intent. Missile and gun crews were placed on alert, but weapons were not armed. The captain ordered all decisions to flow through the CIC first. Electronic warfare specialists noticed an anomaly. The signals included repeated low-frequency pulses consistent with attempts to jam radar tracking. The CIC realized the contacts were deliberately masking their signature. This was no ordinary vessel. The possibility of small unmanned platforms designed for testing or reconnaissance rose in discussion. Operators rechecked algorithms. Data was cross-referenced with satellite imagery. As the contacts entered the edge of radar range, visual confirmation was sought. Lookouts scanned the horizon. Binoculars and optical sensors identified small high-speed boats equipped with electronic arrays. No weaponry was visible. Analysts concluded these were advanced reconnaissance craft likely testing electronic countermeasure responses. The decision to continue observation was reinforced. CIC operators initiated countermeasure simulations to understand threat potential. The contacts executed a series of maneuvers consistent with probing but without aggression. Every movement was logged. The radar data and electronic emissions were stored for post-mission analysis. The watch officer remained focused, ensuring that no action would provoke a premature engagement. Suddenly, the northern contact executed a sharp turn directly away from the carrier. The second contact followed suit moments later. The CIC team confirmed vectors. Both contacts moved beyond radar horizon. Operators rechecked all systems to ensure no hidden signatures remained. The tension slowly lifted. Debriefing began immediately. Analysts reviewed the logs. The contacts were identified as part of a regional intelligence exercise designed to test U.S. Navy responsiveness. No hostile intent existed. The CIC's disciplined restraint had prevented an unnecessary escalation that could have drawn multiple nations into a confrontation. Lessons were recorded to enhance future operational protocols. The day's events highlighted the unique capabilities of the CIC. It integrated data from radar, sonar communications, and intelligence sources. It enabled decision-makers to distinguish between real threats and ambiguous signals. The crew's adherence to protocols and restraint prevented a potential Caribbean conflict. The operation underscored the importance of precision decision-making and the human factor in modern naval warfare. Even as routine scanning resumed, analysts studied subtle anomalies in electronic emissions. They considered implications for future encounters. How often did false positives occur, and how could technology improve identification without triggering engagement? CIC officers documented every detail to enhance training for future watch teams. The ship's operations were a testament to discipline and training. Crew rotations, sensor sweeps, and predictive modeling combined to create a comprehensive operational picture. Decisions were made in seconds but carried consequences across global theaters. The day concluded with no engagement, but an extraordinary demonstration of naval restraint and operational mastery. By nightfall, the carrier maintained standard patrols. The crew remained alert. Lessons learned were integrated into doctrine. The CIC had not only managed immediate threats, but strengthened the Navy's ability to respond intelligently under uncertainty. The radar screens glowed faintly, signaling readiness. The ship and crew had averted a war without firing a shot. In the quiet after the tension, the CIC officers reviewed one final anomaly. A subtle, intermittent signal remained in the background. Analysts could not determine its source. It did not appear hostile, yet it hinted at an unseen presence in the area. The room fell silent as officers contemplated the unknown. The threat had passed, but the mystery persisted. The USS Gerald R continued its patrol in the Caribbean Sea. Each radar sweep, each signal, analysis, each decision had reaffirmed the delicate balance between aggression and restraint. The CIC had proven its value. Lives were preserved. Escalation was avoided. Yet as the crew knew well, the sea held more unknowns than answers, and vigilance was never complete. A single soft ping echoed across the radar display. The CIC team turned to the screens. Another unknown signature had appeared. The contact was distant. Its intent was unclear. And for the crew of the Gerald R. the day's lesson was clear. In the Combat Information Center, knowledge, discipline, and restraint were the difference between war and peace. The suspense lingered. The CIC was ready. The next moment could arrive at any second. The story of restraint, technology, and human judgment in the heart of the Navy's nerve center was far from over. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Gerald R. every radar ping could mean life or war. Unidentified contacts appeared in the Caribbean, testing the nerves and precision of the crew. Every decision demanded restraint. Every second counted, and a single misstep could have sparked a conflict. Through discipline, technology, and expert analysis, the crew identified the threats without firing a shot. What unfolded was a high-stakes dance of intelligence and patience that kept the Caribbean from erupting into war. The CIC's vigilance proved the power of knowledge and restraint in modern naval operations. Don't forget to subscribe to Naval Pulse for more insider stories from the heart of the Navy. Which moment in the CIC do you think was the most critical? Let us know in the comments.